This Sicha is Sicha Mishpatim, Tafshinun Beis. This is a Sicha which is different than the others, where the Sicha, the long Sicha, was very complicated. We just took certain parts and focused on that. This Sicha, most of the Sicha, we can actually learn inside, follow it, and that's what we're going to be doing. And if you look at the date, it was said Zach Shvat, which is the 27th of Shvat. The reason why I didn't say Chav Zayin was that Rebbe usually preferred that if the letters of a date would also spell a word that's a positive word. Let's say today is Yud Zayin. What's Yud Zayin? Good. The gematria good. So sometimes instead of writing Yud Zayin, the Rebbe would write Toy, Kislev, like Tezvav base. It's 17, but it spells the word Toy. Or if it's Chav Ches, okay, that's regular writing, but it also spells Koyach. And many other. So here, when it comes to Chav Zayin, the Rebbe usually turns it to Zach, which means pure, clear, refined. And also, it's exactly 1 month. So it's one of the last Sichas the Rebbe ever gave. 1 month before the Rebbe had the stroke, which was on Chav Zayin Adar, exactly 1 month before. Starts off like this: Yadua, it is known. Shekol Hamuroi Sheba'olam. All events, all episodes and events that happen in the world, everything is bashgacha pratis, which means they happen because Hashem wants them to happen, and therefore yesh b'hem limud v'ira b'avedus adam l'kainai. There's something we can learn from it in terms of how to serve Hashem. So, in other words, if Hashem arranged that this should happen, and He arranged that I should know that this happened, that means there's something I could learn from it in terms of serving Hashem. How much more so? If the events that happen are very general and major events, and very important events, something related to a country where most Yidden are there in the time of Galus, and countries that are Bali Hashpa, countries that have tremendous influence, Manhigus, Kaloy, and Kulay, and in some ways they're sort of leaders amongst all the nations of the world. Being that it's something on such a huge scale, it must be Shagam Halimud V'Hira, that whatever there is to learn from these events, it also must be that the thing to learn from it is also something general and major in terms of a Yid serving Hashem.
What does it mean, general and major? Like,
there's certain things that happen that are related and relevant to me. It's not relevant to anybody else. Certain things that happen are relevant to the whole community, sometimes relevant to the whole country, and sometimes relevant to the whole world. So they're saying a major event that's relevant to the whole world. First of all, it's closely, it's general, means it doesn't just affect individuals; it affects the whole world and all the nations of the world, and especially something which is an event that's very significant. So it must be that whatever we can learn from it is also very general, which means it's not something which is a detail in Yiddishkeit, but it's something which has an all-encompassing effect on everything in Yiddishkeit. Similarly, this is also the same with the events that just happened recently. Now, the Rebbe did this often, which is to point out something that happened in the world and point out like what's really going on. Why did this happen? What does it mean as far as Shamayim is concerned, as far as heaven is concerned? And mainly, what could we learn from it? How could it affect us? Like we just said a moment ago, that everything that happens, no matter what the reason is, no matter what the natural explanation is, it's ultimately it's all Hashem, and He's doing it for a purpose. But down here, it looks like it's happening because of this technical reason or that technical reason. First of all, The event that he's referring to is what happened this Erev Shabbos. The talk the Rebbe is giving is on Shabbos. But there's something that happened Friday. What happened? Shabbos, this is 1992. Shabbos Asfu Viskansu Yagdov Rosh Medinas Gedolos V'Chashuvos Ba'olam. On that day, there was a gathering of the heads of many countries, but mainly many of the bigger countries and the more influential, important countries. And at the head of all these leaders was the two superpowers, the two superpowers, which is Russia and the United States. And they made they made a resolution. And they announced it, they publicized it. And what did they publicize? That what? Al-Tkufa Chadasha, that we now entered a new era, the Yachasei Medinas Ha'elam, and how the nations of the world will interact with each other. The Dapka, no, the Bittul Matzav Shel Milchamas, to discontinue the whole idea of war between one country and another country, and not just a resolution, let's not have war, but actually something practical. It'll express itself gam b'tzimtzum u'bittul kli neshek, by reducing and ultimately eliminating. There should be no weapons. It's of course not weapons of mass destruction. Vad l'shalom v'avdus. Not only no weapons and no war, there'll be a ceasefire, but it'll actually be true peace. Shituf pa'ula ve'ezra hadodis. There'll be cooperation, and there'll be interaction and helping one another, one country with another country, the taivus anushas kula, for the benefit of all humanity. That happened on Friday. That there was this big meeting this is, by the way, 1992. Means that January, that's when it was announced that the Soviet Union is no longer in existence. It was the headlines of one of the newspapers. It said on top, "The party is over." The Communist Party. Preceding this, Bashgacha Pratis again, there was Ne'umay Shel Nasi Medina Zu L'Umma Kula, where the president of this country, meaning America, spoke to the whole nation. The State of the Union address, it's called. Every year, this time of the year, the president of the United States gives a talk to the whole nation once a year. There are different times of the year that he says things, mentions things. There's press conferences, but this is like once a year he speaks to the nation. And that week was that talk, and it was on a Wednesday. The early Yom Revi'i Kamesh Shabbata, which means it was a few days before Shabbos. Wednesday, as you know, was already the beginning going into Shabbos. Why? Because Wednesday is 3 days before Shabbos, and in Torah, 3 days before is like connected to what's going to come. In fact, if you look at footnote number 5, the Rebbe says it's also emphasized in another thing, in the little Lechun Ranana. What's the little Lechun Ranana? Anybody know what that is? The little Lechun Ranana, Lechun Ranana Katan. What? Shir Shayom, right. In today's Shir Shayom, which is Wednesday, every day we say another chapter of Tehillim. Today's chapter starts with Kel Nekamas Hashem. It's a chapter in Tehillim. In Tehillim, what number is it? It's number 90 something. Let's look it up. So what should be is that this should be recited like everything else, just that chapter. Let me just see exactly where this is. 94. But if you notice, if you look in your siddur, in the siddur you can't tell, but after you finish 94, we say 3 psukim from 95. That's not done any other day. Every day we do one chapter of Tehillim. Over here we add 3 lines from another chapter. And which chapter is that? It starts off with L'chun Ranana, the first three psukim in the chapter of Tehillim, which we say Friday night, L'chun Ranana. So why do we say on Wednesday the three psukim of L'chun Ranana? The answer is because Wednesday is when we gotta start preparing for Shabbos. In other words, in a certain way, the week is set up like this. Shabbos brings sort of it extends to Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And then Wednesday, Thursday, Friday starts the preparation for the next Shabbos. The next Shabbos extends to Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. And Wednesday starts the preparation for the next Shabbos. Even in Halacha, the Rebbe once spoke about the idea of people doing elective surgery before Shabbos. If someone does surgery, God forbid, because there's some sort of an emergency and it's urgent, you don't delay it. You do it as soon as you can. But if it's elective, which means I can do it anytime I want, not to do it starting from Wednesday. Why? Because when a person does surgery, very often there's things that you need to do. Sometimes you have to do malacha on Shabbos. The person has to be in the hospital. So if it's the kind of thing that you can choose, so from 3 days before Shabbos, you have to already prevent things happening that you shouldn't end up doing things on Shabbos. But the days before is fine. So Wednesday is already the beginning of Shabbos, Hascholos Erev Shabbos. What happened on Wednesday? Shaboy Heidia V'Hichriz Al Puloiso. On that day, the president, at that time was President Bush. Bush the first one. With Tzimtzum L'Bittul Kli Neshek, that the United States of America is going to be reducing and ultimately getting rid of weapons. But not only getting rid of weapons, what are we going to do with the surplus of money? How much money is wasted on weapons, spent on weapons? Is millions and millions of dollars. That money will go to the Yitanul. Now they're not going to use it for producing weapons. That'll go for Inyoni Kalkala Shalamadina, to improve the economic situation in the country. And this announcement, Ushra, based on the Chorim, it was endorsed and approved by Congress. This is the place where that's where they establish what the law of the country is. That's where they establish legislation. And this is something which is accepted according to Torah, because Dina de Malchus Dina. The halacha is that in a country they have certain laws. We Jews are obligated to follow those laws if we live in that country. And the only laws we don't have to follow is if they go against Torah. But if there's laws in other areas not against Torah, we have to follow it. So the Rebbe is bringing out that this has significance and that has validity according to Torah, what he said, because it was backed up and confirmed and validated by the Congress. The Yeshli is Bainin. So these are major events that are affecting the whole world. First it was the United States of America in itself, and then the United States and America and Russia and other countries that were following them. So we need to think about this. What can we learn? What's the hira from this event? Not only in general, what can we learn from it, but let's think about the place and the time that it happened. Also the time in terms of Torah, the parsha of the week, and that will give us more insight in what the significance of this event is. If we pay attention to the time that it happened, we pay attention to the place that it happened, we pay attention to which parsha of the week it happened, that will give us more insight in what this event is saying to us. Now, generally speaking, for us, we can't say, oh, this and this happened, so now that means we have to do this and this. It's not so simple. Because when you see things happening, it could mean a lot of things. So if it leads to something positive, hey, take it. But here, like I remember hearing from someone, he had a job in a summer camp in terms of being like a manager of sorts. And he was in this camp for many years. And 1 year before the summer, someone offered him a similar job, but in a different camp. So he asked the Rebbe. He was in the Rebbe's room. And he said to the Rebbe, well, being that they offered me this job before the summer, I see it as a Shgacha Pratis. So therefore, it means I should probably take this new job. The Rebbe's reaction was, what do you know about Hashgacha Pratis? In other words, we all know that everything is Hashgacha Pratis, but the interpreting the Hashgacha Pratis, what it means, that's not so simple. Not everybody can interpret Hashgacha Pratis. I remember somebody once asked me that she was suggested a certain shidduch, and 5 different people suggested the same shidduch, and she knows that they don't know of each other, which means it's coming from 5 different places. And they suggested the shidduch. And she's asking them, what do I think? She thinks it must be Hashgacha Pratis, because 5 different people suggested. So I say, perhaps it is. So maybe you should go and see what it's like. She says, no, well, why not? Well, she found out that it's not healthy. Not healthy physically, not healthy emotionally. So why are you considering it? So she said, because it's Hashgacha Pratis. So he said, maybe Hashem wants you to say no 5 times. That's Hashgacha Pratis. In other words, she's interpreting the Hashgacha. That's Hashgacha Pratis. I agree with her 100%. But you don't know why the Hashgacha Pratis is. Maybe these 2 names have to come up, and I have to say no once, I have to say no 5 times, and then my real shidduch will come. How do you know it's Hashgacha Pratis? So how do I know? I use my judgment according to Torah. And if it's something which is not compatible, something which doesn't fit, and something which is risky because the person is not well, then I know it. I have to say no, and Hashgacha Pratis was probably that.
Wow.
So, but here the Rebbe is saying there's definitely something here that's coming to teach us Hashgacha Pratis. What is it? And the Rebbe goes on to say the following. I have a different question. The Rebbe says everything's Hashgacha Pratis. How much more so something that's so general? What does it mean, how much more so? If everything is Hashgacha Pratis, what do you mean more or less? Is it Hashgacha Pratis? Not Hashgacha Pratis. I always had that question because the Rebbe would say this often. Everything is Hashgacha Pratis, but something that happens to a tzaddik is so much more Hashgacha Pratis. And I was thinking always, what does it mean so much more? If it's Hashgacha Pratis, whatever happens to me, whatever happens to one of my little children is Hashgacha Pratis. So in what way is the tzaddik different? So one year the Rebbe asked the question, and the Rebbe answered, what it means is that when it happens to something that's more significant, or let's say a tzaddik, or something related to Torah, then the Hashgacha Pratis is more open, and it's more accessible for all of us to understand what the Hashgacha Pratis. So if I walk down the street and a leaf falls down, I say, I must know what's the Hashgacha Pratis. And before I turn around, another leaf falls down. What's the Hashgacha Pratis? That leaf falling down. I can drive myself crazy. We're not meant to understand this Hashgacha Pratis. This is not for us. But when something happens more significant in my life, especially something related to Torah, to mitzvahs, to my family, to my parnasa, then I need to look in, and then I'll probably be able to see more openly what is the Hashgacha Pratis. So therefore, when something happens, that's a major event, and it's affecting the whole world, certainly we're supposed to look at it and learn from it. What is the Hashgacha Pratis? Same like now, what's happening in Israel, what's happening with Syria, what's happening with the hostages. All this is something which the whole world is focused on. There's certainly things that we have to relate to and understand what Hashem is showing us. Beis, Halimud Vayram and Mu'urazeh, what you can learn from this event is also something which is Kloli V'ikri B'Avedosam Shel B'nai Yisrael, something which is all-encompassing and major in the way Yidden have to serve Hashem. And what is it? Which Aveda are we talking to? Lahavi Limaisa Mashiach. As you recall, we just had these words. This was the theme of the Kinus for all the Shluchim, and the Rebbe spoke about it. The Aveda of to do everything we can to bring Mashiach. How is this related to that? Mehayud and Magula, one of the promises that we find in the Torah, promising us what's going to happen when the Gula Mitzvah Shlema comes to Mashiach Tzidkenu. What does it say about how the non-Jews will react in that time? So there's a pasuk. This is the pasuk. V'kitzu chabeisam li'itim. They will crush their swords and make it into plowshares. V'chaniseseyem lemizmeris. And their spears will turn into, they say it means pruning instruments. In other words, when you have to reach a fruit that's very high up in a tree, you have a long stick that cuts it off, and you can take it. So the spears will be turned into that, and the metal that's used for a sword will turn into plowshares. Someone just sent me a clip of one of the tanks in Syria where somebody who sells fruits turned it into a fruit stand. Took the tank and put boxes of fruits all over the selling it. In other words, what it means is that these instruments that were used for war and for, God forbid, spilling blood and shortening people's lives will actually become, and that will be used for things that bring more food in the world and more life in the world. That's the prophecy.
I don't know if people really interpreted that deep when they saw that picture. It's funny.
It's
Just you think it's the next level?
yeah. What did you think it would
I
mean?
just thought it was cool. Like, no, it's nice.
Oh, you saw the
But-
picture?
Yeah, I guess I thought, yeah. I
Yeah.
didn't put it together. Like,
I guess once you learn the Rebbe Sicha, you one track minded. That's all.
nice.
Another thing, the Rebbe is introducing. There's 2 points here. Number one, when Mashiach comes, swords will be turned into plowshares, which means that which was used for destroying life will be used for food and enhancing life. And the second thing is what it says in the prophecy is who will be responsible to make this happen? Mashiach. There's certain things that'll happen. Just this is going to be what's going to change in those days. But there's certain things which are more related to Mashiach himself. Like it says, Mashiach will build the Beis Hamikdash. It's one of the activities that Mashiach will do. So here too, this idea that the nations of the world will come together will be something which will be affected by Mashiach. Where do we know this from? So this is the pasuk. It says like this: "V'shafat bein hagoyim." Mashiach will judge the nations. V'yichiach lamim rabim. He will rebuke the many nations. And in parentheses, he brings the Mefarshim, the Mefarshim that explain this. Specifically, it's called Radak. Radak is one of the major commentaries on Tanakh. So it means Hashefer, who is the judge that he's talking about? Melech HaMashiach. She'odin kol ha'amim, he'll be the master of all the nations, because everyone will accept him as a king, will be under his sovereignty. Hu yechiach lahem, and he will give them musar, he will rebuke them. If there's anybody that's found to be doing things which are not the way it should be, he would, and the things that are not in order, he'll tell them to straighten things out. And that's why there won't be any wars. He will reconcile between the nations, he'll bring them together. There won't be wars because they'll have just their sort of negotiations, and through negotiations they'll work things out. We don't have to fight. And they'll destroy those wars, those weapons, and what they'll do with them, use it for working on the land. There's another passage that says at the end of days. The end of days always means the days of Mashiach, the end of Golus. The mountain of Hashem will be will be established, which means the Beis Hamikdash, which stands on a mountain. The Nahar Elav Kol HaGoyim, and all the non-Jews will flow to him. V'holchu Amim Rabim, and many nations will come. V'amru, they will say, L'chu v'nale al Har Hashem, come, let us go and let us ascend to the mountain of Hashem. Al Beis Elokei Yaakov, to the house of the God of Jacob. V'yireinu midrachav, he will teach us from his ways. The Neilcha Berachesa will follow his path. Kimitzian takes the Torah, but Hashem Yerushalayim, because Torah will come from Tzion, and the words of Hashem will come from Yerushalayim. Who's this teacher that's going to be teaching? So the Radak writes, Hameira, who is the teacher? Melech HaMashiach. V'alav nema b'shafat, because it says he will judge. So in other words, Mashiach will be the one that's responsible for the fact that there will be peace among the nations, and they won't be fighting, and they'll destroy the weapons of war, and they'll use it for something positive. By the way, what does it mean that Torah comes from Tzion? Why Torah is not sort of confined to Yerushalayim. Torah, all of Eretz Yisrael is Torah. Why Yerushalayim specifically?
For purity?
What? No, he received Torah in Yerushalayim. No, he received Torah in Har Sinai.
It's a thing of purity.
But the Torah is everywhere.
Like a root is from purity. The conception, right?
The answer is, where were the greatest authorities of Torah in every generation gathered together? In the Sanhedrin. Where was the Sanhedrin? In Yerushalayim. Where in Yerushalayim? In the Beis HaMikdash. They had a room there called Lishkas HaGozis, and that's where they sat. And they were considered the source of Torah. So when it says Ki Mitzion Teitzi Torah Dvar Hashem Yerushalayim, which means the Sanhedrin will once again be established, and they're in Yerushalayim, and that'll be the source of Torah for the whole world.
It's literal, it's not even.
Literal, right?
Literal.
Yeah. What you said is also emet, because Torah in its purity ultimately is Yerushalayim.
So do
But
they
the-
sing the song, Mitzion Teitzi Torah, like in Israel, like for Torah, the day after it's recorded, they're not talking about the Sanhedrin, they're really talking about the spirituality of Israel. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, sometimes Tzim is all of Israel, but very often it's specifically Yerushalayim. Now the Rebbe continues. The key should be being that now in these days, machlitim u'machrizim, there is a achlata, there's a resolution, and not only a resolution, but it's being announced by whom? By Roshei Medinas Ha'olam, by the heads of the nations of the world. And what are they announcing? Advar tzimtzum u'bitul klei neshek. The time has come to reduce and to discontinue the production of weapons. They suffer not only the production, but even to destroy those that already exist. What do they say? We'll use the money that we use to produce weapons, we'll use that money to enhance the economic situation, which is literally destroying the swords, and instead of swords, to have more food and more help economically. This is mamish the content of the words that will destroy the swords, to break those tools that are used for war, and last is make it to tools to work the land, where you get bread from. So what do we learn from this? This is a clear sign. That we're now at a point where we're seeing the beginning of this promise. We're witnessing the beginning of the promise. Pointed this out at different times, but here you see it in writing that there's certain things that are happening. They're not just a sign that we're close to Mashiach. Like if you're on the highway and there's a certain, a gas station there, or there's a certain Howard and Johnson, you say, now I know that I'm not far from New Jersey because I know this place is very close to New Jersey. It's a sign. There's things that are happening spiritually that were signs that Mashiach is close. But this is not just a sign. This means that one of the promises, which says in the Torah, is going to happen, has already begun happening. The Gemara says one of the signs of Mashiach is that in the times of Mashiach, before Mashiach comes, we'll see an increase in chutzpah. So sometimes when people have a lot of chutzpah, they say, listen, I'm trying to bring Mashiach closer. And if chutzpah is one of the signs, we have to have more chutzpah to hasten Mashiach's coming. But that's a sign. But here the Rebbe is saying, no, this means that there are promises. Hashem says this is going to happen only when Mashiach comes. And now it's already happening. It's beginning. The beginning has started. Which means we're definitely in the process. That's why we use the term constantly. The process of Gula has already begun and it's unfolding in front of our eyes. Liesabir, to explain this even further, Kiva shenitzayim bizman hasi shall be as Mashiach tzidkenu. being that we are in the height of that time, in other words, like it's already the high point, Mashiach has to come already. Harei zeh melech Mashiach ba, like it says there, is quoting the language of the Medrash. We're going to be able to say, here is Mashiach. Reim kvar, therefore we see already, mein v'ascholus puloseh shemelech Mashiach alamed. In other words, let's remember, this is sort of what you're reading now is the key to the whole Sicha. 2 points. Number one, that the change in the world is the beginning of the change that will happen when Mashiach comes. Number two, being that we just learned the Radak, that commentary, that who's going to make the change? Mashiach is going to make it. Now that we see the change happening, means that we're already witnessing Mashiach's impact on the nations of the world. Because it says, the only question is, we never saw the nations, or at that time, President Bush or Gorbachev from Russia coming to any tzaddik and saying to him, okay, tell us what to do. Then I would say Mashiach made them do it. But how do we say this is the effect of Mashiach? So look at the next line. This is a very important pasuk. It's a pasuk in Mishlei where it says the hearts of kings and ministers are in the hands of Hashem. And whose hearts are not in the hands of Hashem? But it means to say, like we said before about Hashgacha Pratis, that when kings or ministers, leaders of countries make a certain decision, it's more openly and more directly connected that Hashem put these thoughts into their head. Hashem put these feelings into their head. So the nations of the world are deciding, let's get rid of weapons, it's because Hashem is putting it into their head. Lahachlit or lahachriz yavdav avramayim the matzah the kitzur chabesim leitim. That Hashem put it in their head that all these leaders of the world should come together and they should make. Now they have their reasons why they're doing it, but the real reason is something is sort of pushing them to do it. That's leid malachim b'sar b'yad Hashem. V'zeh sha'atam sha'achlota v'achroz zu hoysa b'zman zeh davka. And that's why we see this now. In other words, really, this could have been, and then we'll go into this later more. They could have made this announcement years ago. What brought them to make the announcement now is because Shaychusei Amyuchedes Lagul Amitzvah Shleim. It's not a political announcement. It's not a political change. It's a spiritual change, a spiritual shift in the world that we're up to Gula Mitzvah Shleim. And so we see these two things. Number one, that the promise of Gula has already begun. And number two, we're already witnessing the impact of Mashiach that he has on the nations of the world. Now, I want to explain something. This doesn't mean that you'll say to somebody, you know, for sure Mashiach is coming. Look, they announced this and this in the United Nations. Or President Bush said such and such. That's your proof. I mean, there's always all sorts of signs about Mashiach. When the Rebbe says something, basically, we are trusting it and believing it because the Rebbe is a tzaddik and he's telling us the times we're in. But the Rebbe is also telling us, if you look at this, you will see with your eye, these are areas where it manifests. It's like, for example, if Chas v'Shalom somebody is not well, and they take the person's temperature, and the temperature is down. Or they take the person's blood pressure, it's getting close to normal. This is not, the issue. There's other issues that are going on. The person's in bed, the person can't speak, the person's there's other issues. But when you look at these things, that's where it sort of manifests. That's the window where you can see what's really going on. You can judge by the fact that the temperature went down, or whether blood pressure is more relaxed, or other signs are more relaxed. That's a sign that the condition is improving and getting better. Same thing here. The Rebbe is telling us, if you look in that direction, look at what they just announced, that's where you can see and you can hear with your physical ears and physical eyes that we're living in these times, that these are living in Mashiach times. Then the Rebbe is going to go on to say that if you pay attention to where it happened, how it happened, when it happened, you'll see even more clearly that how this is related to Mashiach. So the next time we learn the Sicha, we'll explain like what's the advantage in looking at these things. Why isn't it just enough? Just saying Mashiach is coming. What's the advantage in looking at something physical and saying like we spoke about Syria? You see that Syria fell, and that's one of the things that will happen when Mashiach comes. What does that add? Of course, let's say it just adds more excitement. Is it just more excitement or adds something even deeper than that? So we'll stop here by Gimel. And the next time we'll learn the Sicha, if I remember, we'll go into that. And if I don't, you'll remind me. You're welcome.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I don't know if you can ask, but what's the difference in Sicha Mishpatim and Hashgacha Pratis? I feel like Hashgacha Pratis is more of where it is in like Lubavitch, and Sicha Mishpatim is more of where it is like in Litvish. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but there's a difference between the meaning. There is a difference. Because the Siyata D'Shmaya usually refers to only positive things. Like let's say you succeed in business, you succeed in learning. So we'll say your success is because you had Siyata D'Shmaya, you had divine assistance.
Yeah.
Hashgacha Pratis is for everything, which means, and I was going to say, I lost all my money, that was through Siyata D'Shmaya.
Okay.
But they will say it's Hashgacha Pratis.
Okay. Right.
Hashgacha Pratis is more all-encompassing. And Siyata D'Shmaya is specifically, it is a